food security, but less so on disaster risk reduction. So basically, from there, we looked at the main questions that financial institutions are struggling with. So the questions we asked were, who gets paid to do what? And how do we know when it's done, whatever we've asked them to do? Because for a financial institution, it's very easy to do that when we're talking about traditional infrastructure. We know who gets paid, it's the cement company and the engineering group. We know what they get paid to do is build a seawall. The seawall has very concrete beginning and end date, and you know when it's done. You see it wasn't there before, now it's there, the job is done. It's not the same for ecosystem-based adaptation, so how do we think about those issues? And how do we do that in the context of financing institutions that are crippled by rigid frameworks that have procurement and financial management strangleholds? How do we work with communities to do ecosystem-based adaptations and community institutions, which are very important, if we can't audit their financial management capabilities or they don't meet our standards? How do we do that? How do we do the same with procurement? How do we compare prices, which is what procurement is for, to make sure you get the best price for something? How do we deal with the time frames? 3 to 5 year project is not going to work for ecosystem-based adaptation. It's not just about building a seawall and then you hope the government will take care of managing the operations and maintenance of that seawall. Doing ecosystem-based adaptation is a long-term, permanent engagement. How do we do that in the framework of having a 3-year project, a 3-year cycle? And then there's an issue with funding.
30 seconds, sorry.
Financing institutions tend to want to get out as much money as possible to make sure that, in our case, inclusive good growth happens as quickly as possible. We want to make sure people are poor for less time. And so how do we do that when ecosystem-based adaptation tends to be about small amounts of money? And so one of the things our group discussed was possibly where we need to go is move from input-based financing, which is the traditional framework we use, to performance-based payments. So we don't have to worry about procurement and financial management. It's not a 3 to 5 year cycle. We're not paying for performance. And that leads to the critical missing gap that we came up with as part of our group, which is basically, how do we measure success? What's the criteria against which you can pay for performance? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Quickly, we now have, if that clock is accurate, we have about 5 minutes left, and then I imagine we will get physically dragged out of here. So can we go to Keith, and can I ask for about 2 minutes?
Sure. There's some overlap with the previous speakers. We talked a bit about policy drivers, and some of them are similar to financial drivers. On many different levels, politicians are looking for short-term success, looking for mission accomplished. They're looking at single drivers or single sectors where they want to find a solution. So they'll find someone addressing only sea level rise or only biodiversity, or try and find a political solution to it. We also, political drivers are context specific, different in different regions, different nations, and certainly at a municipal level. So a lot of these drivers we decided were not ideally suited to EBA. EBA is more something effective across multiple sectors with multiple benefits. And so we saw an important thing we have to do is demonstrate how, if politically you're seeking solution quickly for a single driver, how we can shift that discussion to this broader based, multiple wins across multiple sectors over the longer term in EBA. So it's somewhat similar to the financial situation here. In terms of gaps, we mentioned, and it was brought up in one of the talks already, a lot of the EBA projects that we've seen today and that we see around the world are in relatively low population density areas, mountain regions, coastal areas that are not big megacities. And in terms of the vulnerability, adaptation to climate change and vulnerability, we need to start to think about how EBA and ecosystem services can deliver reduced vulnerability to lots of people. So that's one of the gaps in the political realm is we have a lot of action on international level at the CBD COP, the UNFCCC COP, a lot of effort at the national level, but starting to
30
think
seconds.
on municipal level, big cities with lots of vulnerable people, how can we use EBA to help reduce their vulnerability?
Wonderful, thank you very much indeed. Christine, you can see us out in the last 3 minutes before we get dragged out.
Yeah, just to respond, it's not just big cities that have lots of vulnerable people, it's also rural areas, and which are very biodiversity rich and have agrobiodiversity for adaptation and food security. So I think it would be great if you guys started focusing on those areas as well and joining forces with us. With us, I mean those working more on community-based adaptation approaches. The other thing I wanted to respond to your question, where do we find the tools to engage with communities? How can we do participatory vulnerability assessments? There's actually quite a lot of work that's been done on this. For example, IIED produced a special issue on participatory learning and action on community-based adaptation, so I'm referring to that for participatory approaches. Anyway, very quickly to summarise, we looked at the need to document this rapidly disappearing traditional knowledge and the need to go towards participatory approaches which empower communities and therefore have empowered women who are often the people who are most in charge of natural resource management,